All right, all you web design students out there. The last item we worked on was talking about selections, where you cut out part of an image and put it onto another one. We're going to use another technique that is similar to it, but offers more power and more flexibility to do a very similar type assignment. So what I want to do is start by showing you some examples of layer mask. So in this particular layer mask sample we see here, it looks like this gentleman's brushing on this painting onto the wall. And so what they did is someone used a layer mask to create that effect. And so we're combining sort of two layers. One is the layer with the gentleman that is painting. The other layer is what he's painting on. And using a mask, you can create effects like this. I'll show you some other examples. Here's another one. You can use composite images where you have different images combined together. And really, they use the layer mask kind of like a selection. So it's kind of like cutting out part of this lion, that one, and the other one. And so here's another one. One of the things about layer mask, not only does it allow you to sort of make your selection, but it also allows you to make them semi-transparent. So as you see the various famous musicians here, each one has a layer mask, but they've set the transparency to be a little different. And you'll notice there's kind of like this gradient as it fades away, as you get further away from their faces. They sort of just gradually fade away. And so that's an easy thing to do with the layer masks. So I'm going to show you a couple more samples of what students have done in my class using layer masks. So really, you can do a lot of what you could do with selections with layer masks. The cool thing about a layer mask is layer masks are more flexible, and you don't ever permanently alter an image. In a selection, you might cut out the tree and the lamppost from an actual image. In this case, in a layer mask, if you make a mistake, you can always undo it. Everything is nothing's set in stone at any point. So what I want to do now is I want to take, I'm going to make a composite image in Photoshop. And so I'm going to start with this. I found this picture. I'm guessing it's from Hubble or somewhere. And this is going to be my background image. If you look on here, it tells you that this is 800 by 395. I'm going to let this be the size of my image. So I'm going to just right-click and choose Copy Image, put it in Photoshop, choose File New. However, if you want to, you can start with just a solid color background. You could add a gradient, whatever. Background contents, you'll notice it says transparent, but you can always change it to white or whatever the background color was set to. I'm just going to do transparent because I'm just going to paste right in. And my bottommost layer, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to leave it alone. So I paste in my picture. I'm going to zoom in on it just a little bit. And then I'm going to hide these because I want to focus on layers. And layer one, I'm going to leave alone, so I'm just going to go ahead and lock it. I'm going to add a new layer. Actually, I don't even have to add a new layer. When I paste a new image, it will be added. So now I'm going for kind of the surreal, bizarre type picture. And for that reason, I decided I'm going to put floating heads and eyes and things in space. Just to show you just how warped my mind might be. No. So I took this famous French poet, Baudelaire, and he's got the freaky eyes. So I think I'm just going to have his one eye just floating in space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this image, and I'm going to paste it into Photoshop. So I go edit, paste it in. There he is. Now we have a problem with layer 2. The problem is we have all the layer. All I want is his eyeball. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to apply a layer mask to hide part of that layer. So I click on layer 2, and down at the bottom, there's the layer mask icon. So I'm going to zoom in on that so you can see it. Nice and up close. Down here, you want to click Add Layer Style, but before you do, make sure you're on layer 2 before you add the layer mask. We click on here, we go back up, and I want to point out there's the layer mask. And these, it's linked to the layer, so if I move the mask or the layer, they both go together. Okay, right now, if you look at the layer mask on here, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit. If you look at it, though, you'll see that it's all white. Remember I told you all white on a layer mask means the layer is visible. So I have a couple options here. I can do a gradient, for example. So I click on where the paint bucket is, hold it down, get the gradient tool. Now I want to set these colors to default black and white. So I'm going to click on the little white-black icon, and that's default. Foreground's white, background's black. If you notice up here, the gradient goes from white to black. We're on a radial gradient. So if I start in the middle, and we don't have reverse, if I start in the middle, where I start, it will be visible. And as I move out, it's going to go to black, and wherever it's black, it's going to be invisible. And see what just happened there? As soon as I dragged it out and I let go, we can see his face, but we don't see a lot of the surrounding image. That's because it's black around the outside of that circle, so it doesn't show through. Okay, anywhere where it's pure white, it'll be totally visible. So that's a gradient, and you can do different types of gradients. For example, you can go like that. So you can get half of one image. So you can always do a blend of half of one picture and half of another by adding the layer and adding a little bit of a gradient. This is a linear gradient. Here's another one. And so you can do different types of gradients. Now that's not one you want to use, but it's at least something we can do. Here we can just kind of like just get his eyes. So we're just playing around with different gradients right now. Well, let's get a paintbrush. So I want you to get a paintbrush at this point. Get a nice big thick paintbrush. Notice this is 65 pixels in radius. And we have the color white. I'm going to get the color black. And I'm going to paint out part of that layer by painting with black what I don't want. And so now I just have the eyes showing. And I can go around. And there we have it. Okay, so you just paint out what you don't want. You paint in what you do. So if I accidentally get both eyes and I want to bring one back, I just change the color to white. And wherever I paint it white, it comes back. See that? The other thing is there's different shades of gray we can use. So I can use kind of a lighter gray. And I can even paint part of it. And as I go darker in gray, it becomes more faint. See that? So you can do all kinds of really interesting things with different colors. And if you were to choose the color red, for example, it's the same as a type of gray. Okay, so you might as well focus on the black and white colors. Okay, so that's just the overview of how you do it. But let me show you a couple other little techniques you might want to try. You might want to try adding a brush. Now, I have a ton of brush presets. If you haven't done anything, you might not have that many. So what you might want to do is you might want to add by loading a set of brushes. And when you load it, you'll get a set that are pre-built into Photoshop. Oops, I'm sorry, not load. Down here, I want to add different kinds of brushes. So maybe I want special effects brushes. And I can just click OK, and what it's going to do is replace all the brushes with only the special effect. Or I can click a pen, which adds them to the end. Go down to the bottom. And those are the special effects brushes. And so I'm going to use some other kind of brush. For example, there's the snowflake, the stars. We'll try the stars for now. I'm going to get the star, 19 pixels. Once we do that, we should click on this little icon here, and it's going to give you some brush presets. So you can click on here to get shape dynamics. We can do scattering. You can do color dynamics. You can do wet edges. Now watch what happens when I brush in. Let me get the color white. And you see what's happening here? One way to show you this, it's probably better if we get rid of this background here. And I add a new layer and I make it all white. It's going to be easier to see this effect. So I'm just going to paint bucket that in. There we go. You click on the layer. You get your brush. Choose the presets. I'm going to take off wet edges and now brush it in. And I should probably take out color dynamics too. And guess what I did? I did what I told you not to do. Look at this. I accidentally painted over the image. So I just basically ruined it. So now I'm going to have to undo a few steps here. So I'm going to undo it. Control, Alt, Z. Okay. So I'm going to paint bucket that in again. Click on here. Select the layer mask. Got to make sure I do that. Now I can paint bucket it back in. Or I can paint with the paintbrush. There we go. And you see how that brush works. So you can do some really interesting effects using different size brushes and different effects that way. I just wanted to show you kind of some of the things that are available out there. Okay. And of course, I like it the way I did originally with just the two eyes as a stripe. So I'm going to come back to that and put it back in. And anyway, hopefully you guys understand how you can do this and you can play around with it, see what you can come up with, and surprise us.